welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at something called the crab mentality.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, and it's a powerful concept that we found in this essay by Sarai Hannah Ajai. It's called Rising Above the Crab Mentality, a Lenten reflection on democracy, faith, and justice in America.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. But don't worry, we'll unpack all of that. The big thing we're going to be thinking about today is how this crab mentality can actually affect not just, individuals, but like the whole of American society.
Yeah, I always think it's so fascinating when you get these like really vivid images, and Ajay really nails it with this picture of crabs in a bucket.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, so you've got all these crabs, right? They're stuck in this bucket, and each one's like, okay, I'm gonna get out of here, But as soon as one starts climbing up, all the others just grab it and pull it right back down. Yeah, and it's like such a powerful metaphor for something we see all the time in people too, like sometimes we get jealous of other people's success, and instead of celebrating it, we like try to sabotage it.
It's so true. And it really makes you wonder, like, why? Why would anyone want to hold other people back? I mean, the essay really digs into this,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to economics.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What happens when someone like tries to break out of poverty?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like you think people would be super supportive, but a lot of times it's the opposite. It's like they hit this wall of resistance.
From the people around them.
Sometimes even, yeah, imagine it. You're working so hard to improve your life. Maybe you're like going to school or starting a business. And then the people around you, even sometimes your own community, they start pushing back.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, it can be tough. Like in the essay, Ajay gives these specific examples of how this happens. Like there's this social pressure to just like conform, the jealousy from your peers, and sometimes even like fear of change within the community.
Oh, wow. So it's like anyone who tries to like get ahead, they're seen as a threat almost.
Yeah, kinda.
That's crazy. But I guess you can see how that fear takes root, right? Like if someone is doing well, it kind of shakes things up. And if people are used to things being a certain way, it can be unsettling.
Oh, totally. And that's where things start to get really interesting. Like Ajay takes this whole economic angle, and then she connects it to this much bigger question.
Ooh, what's that?
It's a big one. What kind of democracy do we really have here in the U.S.?
Oh, wow. So is she saying that America isn't a democracy then?
Well, she doesn't really give a yes or no answer. She looks at it more like a spectrum. On one end, you have these ideal versions of democracy where everyone has an equal shot. But on the other end, you have systems that are flawed and maybe even harmful to certain groups.
Okay, so like where you fall in that spectrum, how you actually experience American democracy, it's kind of tied to your background. Like if you're struggling economically, you might see it differently.
Yeah, that's exactly what the essay is getting at. Think about it. If you're always just like scraping by, if you see others being held back by the people around them, it kind of makes you wonder, right?
For sure. It makes you question if it's really a level playing field for everyone. And, it's interesting because this whole idea of pulling each other down, it's not just in economics, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. Ajay makes this point that the crab mentality is everywhere. Like you see it in workplaces, communities, even like just in our personal relationships.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. Have you ever felt that? Where you're trying to achieve something and someone is just like holding you back? Maybe they try to discourage you, or maybe they're just not supportive.
Oh, yeah. I think we've all felt that at some point, even if we didn't know what to call it.
Exactly. And it's not a good feeling.
Right.
But the essay doesn't stop there. She doesn't want us to wallow in it. She actually offers some solutions, and it's rooted in faith, which I think is interesting.
That is interesting, especially since it's a Lenten reflection. I guess it makes sense that faith would play a role. But like, how does faith help us overcome this whole crab bucket thing?
Well, Ajay asks this super challenging question, like, are we really our brothers and sisters' keeper? Like the Bible says, are we actually living out these values like justice and equality? The essay kind of suggests that those values are key to breaking free from that cycle of, pulling each other down.
So it's about more than just believing in something. It's about how those beliefs translate into actions, right? Like how it shapes the way we treat each other and contribute to society.
Exactly. And the essay really emphasizes this idea of collective effort, like
Yeah.
individual actions matter, but it takes a shared commitment to build a more just and equitable society.
So it's like we can't just be focused on climbing out of the bucket ourselves. We have to actually change the bucket itself, make it bigger so everyone has a chance to thrive.
That's a great way to put it. Ajay is saying it's not enough to just escape the negativity ourselves. We have a responsibility to help create a world where everyone can succeed, where we're all lifting each other up instead of pulling each other down.
And that makes me think about what you said earlier about democracy existing on a spectrum. If we're all stuck in this crab mentality, it seems like we're going to be on the less ideal end of that spectrum.
Totally. It's like the essay is saying that the health of our democracy depends on us overcoming this mentality, you know? If we're constantly trying to sabotage each other, how can we possibly build a society that's truly just and equitable?
It seems like it all comes down to changing how we see things, right? Like instead of thinking of everything as a zero-sum game where one person's success means someone else has to fail,
Mm,
we need to believe that there's enough for everyone to succeed.
exactly. The essay talks about this difference between a scarcity mentality where success is limited and an abundance mentality where there's enough opportunity for everyone. And that shift in perspective is where faith can play a really powerful role.
So it's about realizing we're all connected, that we're part of a larger community, and that helping others helps us all in the long run.
Exactly. It's about moving from competition to collaboration, from fear to love.
That sounds, I don't know, almost impossible, especially with how ingrained this crab mentality seems to be. But the essay does give some hope that things can change, right?
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be about these big, sweeping changes either. The essay suggests that even little acts of kindness can make a difference.
So like celebrating someone else's success, even if we're feeling kind of jealous. Or, I don't know, offering support to someone who's struggling, even if it's hard.
Exactly. It's those little things that can have a ripple effect. When we lift someone up, we're not just helping them, we're also contributing to a better environment for everyone.
It's like making a conscious choice to break the cycle, even if it feels awkward at first. It's about being part of the solution instead of the problem.
That's such a powerful insight. It's not about waiting for someone else to fix things. It's about each of us taking responsibility and creating the world we want to live in.
That brings us back to the idea that faith is more than just personal belief. It's about putting those beliefs into action, isn't it?
For sure. Like, the essay seems to suggest that true faith should push us to challenge injustice and work for the common good. It's about asking ourselves, how can I use my talents to make a positive impact? How can I support those who are struggling? How can I be an advocate for justice?
And those are questions that anyone can ask themselves, even if they're not religious, right? It's about recognizing our shared humanity and how we're all connected.
Absolutely. The essay isn't just for a religious audience, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to build a better future.
Yeah, like she's saying, hey, we all have a role to play here. We can't just sit around and complain about the crab mentality. We have to actually do something to change it.
And, the essay doesn't pretend that religion is simple either. It recognizes that it can be complex, a source of both unity and division, of progress and oppression.
That's an important point. It's not about blindly following any dogma. It's about engaging with our faith or even just our personal values in a thoughtful and compassionate way and asking ourselves, how can we use these to make a positive difference in the world?
You got it. It's about recognizing that faith, or even just trying to live ethically, it's a journey. We're all always learning and changing and hopefully growing.
And hopefully that growth leads to more compassion, understanding, and justice for everyone.
That's a beautiful thought.
It really is. And it reminds us that even with all the craziness in the world, there's always hope for a better future. But that hope, it doesn't just appear out of nowhere.
Right. It's something we create through the choices we make, the actions we take, and our dedication to building a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. We started with that image of crabs pulling each other down, and we've explored how that plays out in economics, democracy, and even in our personal lives.
Yeah.
But the thing that really sticks with me is that we don't have to be trapped in that cycle.
That's really the heart of Ajai's message, isn't it? That we have the power to choose a different path, individually and together.
The essay is so clear that personal responsibility and collective action go hand in hand. It's not enough to just focus on our own success. We have to actually work to dismantle the systems that keep others stuck in that crab bucket.
And that starts with that fundamental shift in perspective, doesn't it? Moving away from scarcity and toward abundance, from competition to collaboration, from fear to love.
Huge shifts, for sure. But the essay gives us real-life examples of how that can look in our everyday lives. Like, remember that point about celebrating someone else's success, even if we feel a little bit envious? That really stuck with me. It's a small thing, but it starts chipping away at that crab mentality.
And that's what makes this essay so powerful. It doesn't just leave us with lofty ideals, it gives us practical steps to put those ideals into practice. And that change doesn't have to be huge to be meaningful either.
Right. Every time we choose to lift someone up instead of pulling them down, or making a difference,
Hmm.
whether it's offering support to someone who's having a hard time, speaking out against injustice, or simply choosing to see the good in others.
The essay ends with a powerful question. Ajay argues that the future of our nation hinges on our commitment to justice and the common good.
And then she asks, what specific actions can you take in your own life or your community to help build a society that really supports everyone? It's like a challenge to each of us to look at what we're doing and ask ourselves, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution?
Yeah, it's a reminder that making the world a better place isn't someone else's job. It's up to each and every one of us.
Well, that's a pretty powerful note to end on. We've covered a lot in this deep dive, from the sneaky nature of the crab mentality and its effects on things like economic mobility and democracy, to the hope that we can actually choose a different path and lift each other up instead of dragging each other down.
It's been a pleasure talking about all this with you.
And with you, our listener. We hope this has gotten you thinking and maybe inspired you to take action. Remember, creating a better future starts with each of us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. I think most of us have felt that at some point, even if we didn't really have a name for it. It's a pretty yucky feeling. But where does the essay go from here? It doesn't sound like Ajay just wants us to wallow in all his negativity, right?
No, no, you're right. It definitely doesn't. It's not just pointing fingers, it's actually offering a path forward. And the interesting thing is that it's rooted in faith.
Hmm. That is interesting. Well, I guess it is a Lenten reflection, so I guess it makes sense in a way.
Yeah.
But how does faith help us overcome this crab bucket thing?
Well, she asked this huge question. Are we truly our brothers and sisters' keeper, like what the Bible says?
Right.
And then are we really, really living out those values, like justice and equality? Because the essay kind of suggests that those values are the key to breaking free from this cycle of, pulling each other down.
So it's not just about believing in something. It's more about how those beliefs turn into actions, how
Yeah.
it changes how we treat each other and, what we do for society.
Yeah, exactly. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And the essay really emphasizes that it has to be a team effort. Like, obviously, what we do as individuals matters, but it takes all of us working together to really build a more just and equitable society.
It's like we can't just focus on escaping from the bucket ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to change the bucket itself.
Yeah.
Make it big enough that everybody has a chance to do well.
That's a great way to think about it. Ajay's point is it's not enough to just save ourselves.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to try and create a world where everyone has a chance to succeed, a world where we're lifting each other up, not pulling each other down.
Oh, for sure. And it makes me think back to what you said earlier about democracy,
Yeah.
how it exists on this spectrum. If we're all caught up in this crab mentality, it seems like we're going to be stuck on that not so good end of the spectrum.
Oh, totally. It's like if we're always trying to trip each other up, how are we ever going to build a society that's truly just and fair? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It seems like the big thing is changing how we view things. Instead of thinking that if one person wins, someone else has to lose, we need to start believing that there's enough for everyone to win.
Exactly. The essay talks about this. There's this scarcity mindset where you think success is limited, and then there's this abundance mentality where there's enough opportunity for everyone. And faith can be really powerful in helping us make that shift.
So it's about understanding that we're all connected, that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and that when we help others, we're actually helping ourselves in the long run.
Exactly. Moving from competition to helping each other, from fear to
Yeah.
love.
That sounds like a pretty tall order,
Yeah.
especially with how deeply ingrained this crab mentality seems to be. But the essay does give us some hope that things can actually change, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be these huge dramatic changes either. Even small acts of kindness.
Like what? Like celebrating someone else's success, even if we're feeling a little jealous. Or offering to help someone who's struggling, even if it's hard.
Exactly. Those little things can make a huge difference. When we choose to lift someone up, it's not just about them. We're actually helping to create a more positive environment for everyone.
It's like choosing to break the cycle, even if it feels kind of awkward at first. Being part of the solution instead of the problem.
Right. That's so important. It's not about waiting for someone else to come and fix things. It's about each of us taking responsibility and actually creating the world we want to live in.
And that takes us right back to that idea that faith is about more than just believing, right? It's about what you do.
For sure. The essay seems to suggest that true faith should inspire us to stand up against injustice and work towards what's good for everyone. Like asking ourselves, how can I use what I'm good at to make a positive impact? Or how can I help those who are struggling? Or even, how can I be a voice for justice?
And those are questions anyone can ask themselves.
Huh.
You know, it's about recognizing that we're all human and that we all have a responsibility to each other.
Absolutely. The essay isn't just talking to religious people, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to make the world a better place.
Yeah, like she's saying, hey, we all have a part to play here. We can't just sit around complaining about the crab mentality. We have to do something to change it.
Right. And, the essay acknowledges that religion can be a complicated thing. It's not always sunshine and roses. It can be a source of division and oppression, too.
True, true. So it's not about blindly following rules. It's about engaging with our faith or even just our personal values, in a thoughtful way. And asking ourselves, how can we use these to actually make a positive difference in the world?
You got it. It's about recognizing that faith, or even just trying to live ethically. It's a journey, not a destination. We're always learning and changing, hopefully for the better.
And hopefully that leads us to be more compassionate and understanding and to create more justice for everyone.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It is, isn't it? And it reminds me that even with all the challenges in the world, there's always hope for a better future. But that hope doesn't just magically appear out of nowhere.
Yeah, we have to build it through the choices we make, the actions we take, and our commitment to creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. We started with that image of crabs pulling each other down, and we've seen how that mentality plays out in so many different areas, like economics and our democracy, and even just in our own lives. But the thing that I keep coming back to is we don't have to be trapped in that cycle.
That's such a powerful message from Ajay, isn't it? We have the power to choose a different path, both on our own and together.
And the essay makes it very clear that being responsible for ourselves and taking action together, they go hand in hand. We can't just focus on our own success. We have to actually try to break down those systems that keep other people stuck in the crab bucket.
And that all starts with changing how we see things, doesn't it? Moving away from that idea of scarcity and embracing abundance, from competition to collaboration, from fear to love.
There are big changes, for sure. But the essay gives us real-world examples of what that can actually look like that idea about celebrating other people's success, even if we're a little jealous.
Yeah.
I really like that one. It's a small thing, but it chips away at that crab mentality.
And that's what's so cool about this essay, It doesn't just leave us with these high-minded ideas. It actually gives us practical things we can do to start living them out. And those changes don't have to be huge to be meaningful either.
Right. Every time we choose to lift someone up instead of pulling them down, we're making a difference. Whether it's offering a helping hand to someone who's having a tough time, speaking up against injustice, or just choosing to see the good in people.
The essay ends on a powerful note. Ajay argues that the fate of our nation really comes down to whether we commit to justice and the common good.
And then she asks, what are you going to do in your own life and in your community to help build a society where everyone can thrive? It's like she's challenging each of us to really look at ourselves and ask, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution?
It's a reminder that building a better world isn't someone else's job. It's up to all of us.
That is a powerful way to end things. We've covered a lot in this deep dive, haven't we? From the sneaky way the crab mentality works and how it affects things like economic mobility and democracy, to the hope that we can actually choose to do things differently and lift each other up instead of dragging each other down.
It's been great talking about all of this with you.
And with you, our listener. We hope this has given you some things to think about, maybe even inspired you to take action, because a better future starts with each of us. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, it really is. And it reminds us that even with all the, challenges and everything, there's always hope for something better.
Right, but it's not something that just kind of pops up,
Yeah, we have to work at it.
Yeah, exactly. We have to
Yeah.
create it. By the choices we make, the things we do, how dedicated we are to building a world where everybody has the opportunity to succeed. This deep dive has been, well, it's been a journey, hasn't it? We started with that image of crabs all pulling each other down, and we've talked about how that mentality plays out in economics, in our democracy, even in our own lives. But the thing that I keep coming back to is this, we don't have to be trapped in that cycle.
That's Ajay's big message, right? That we
Yeah.
actually have the power to choose something different, both as individuals and as a society.
The essay is so clear on that personal responsibility and taking action together, they go hand in hand. It's not enough to just focus on our own success. We have to actually work to dismantle the systems that keep others trapped in that crab bucket.
And to do that, we have to start with changing how we see things, like moving away from that scarcity mindset and embracing abundance, from competition to collaboration, from fear to love.
Those are some big shifts, for sure. But the essay gives us some concrete examples, like everyday things we can do. Like, remember that point about celebrating someone else's success, even if we're feeling a little envious? That one really stuck with me. It's a small thing, but it's like chipping away at that crab mentality little by little.
And that's what I think is so powerful about this essay. It doesn't just give us these big ideas, it actually gives us practical steps we can take to start living those ideas. And the changes don't have to be huge to make a difference either.
Right. Every time we choose to lift someone up instead of pulling them down, we're making a difference. Whether it's offering support to someone who's struggling, or speaking out against injustice, or just choosing to see the good in other people.
The essay ends with this really powerful question. Ajay says that the fate of our nation depends on whether we commit to justice and the common good.
And then she asks, what are you going to do in your own life, in your community, to help build a society where everyone can truly thrive? It's like she's challenging each of us to take a good look in the mirror and ask, am I part of the problem? Or am I part of the solution?
It's a good reminder. Building a better world, it's not someone else's job. It's all of our responsibility.
Well, that's a powerful note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Everything from how sneaky the crab mentality can be and how it affects things like economic mobility and democracy, to the hope that we can choose a different path and lift each other up instead of pulling each other down.
It's been great discussing all this with you.
And with you, our listeners. We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought and maybe inspired you to make a change. Because remember, a better future starts with each of us. Thanks for joining us.